In November, Idahoans will have the chance to say yes or no to changing how our state does elections. The Open Primaries Initiative qualified for the ballot, and it looks to accomplish two distinct things. The initiative proposes a nonpartisan primary election where the top 4 vote getters, regardless of their political party, would advance to the general. The general election would then have instant runoff voting, often referred to as ranked choice voting, and voters would choose their top candidate and rank the remaining candidates in order of preference. If no candidate wins with more than 50% of the vote after the first choice rankings are counted, then the last place candidate would be eliminated, and each vote for that candidate would go to the voter's second choice, and then that process would go on until one candidate gets at least 50% of the vote. Then they are declared the winner. And although the initiative got the stamp of approval from the Secretary of State to be on the November ballot, Idaho's Attorney General is saying, not so fast. There's a new legal challenge from the AG, Attorney General Raul Labrador, and he's looking to remove the initiative off the ballot altogether. It's not the first legal battle between the AG and Idahoans for open primaries, the group behind the initiative. Last summer, in fact, Labrador was sued by the group over the ballot title that he gave the initiative. It's a job that he and the Secretary of State have to do. But in the end, long story short, the Supreme Court asked Labrador to change it from what it originally was. But now we are back to the courts about a year later with a fresh lawsuit filed from Idaho's AG. Aspen Shumpert heard the concerns from AG Labrador himself and got reaction from Idahoans for Open Primaries.
Idaho's current primary voting allows political parties to close their primary, something the Republican Party has chosen to do. A system that the Idahoans for Open Primaries Coalition says is leaving a large group of people out.
There are 270,000 independent voters. When they show up to vote in the most important primary elections, they're told that they must join a political party just to exercise their right to vote. We believe that's wrong.
The Idahoans for Open Primaries Coalition is working to change that.
We want to give every voter the right to participate in every taxpayer-funded election, and we also want to give voters better choices when they show up to vote.
Luke Mayville with the coalition says the initiative would open up the primary election for voters, and the top 4 candidates, regardless of what party, would move on to the general election, where voters then would use a ranked choice voting to decide the race winner.
The law says
But Attorney General Raul Labrador has 2 problems with the initiative, and he's now suing the Secretary of State's office to take the initiative off the ballot.
In my opinion, they deceived the public by calling it an open primary when the Supreme Court said it wasn't an open primary, but they also deceived the public when they didn't talk about the 2 parts of the initiative.
In the lawsuit, Labrador alleges volunteers who explained the initiative while they were collecting signatures provided a lack of information about the initiative.
The claim that, volunteers who were collecting signatures somehow deceived the public, it's a baseless claim, and it's frankly insulting to the thousands of ordinary Idahoans who spent hours of their time talking to their neighbors, talking to their friends about this initiative. People worked hard to collect these signatures, and they discussed every aspect of this initiative very carefully.
The Idahoans for Open Primaries Coalition feels the Attorney General's lawsuit is a political stunt, and the Attorney General is interfering with the election.
We do not believe this lawsuit is going to be taken seriously by the court.
And why do you feel that way?
Because at the heart of it, there is nothing unconstitutional about giving all voters the right to participate.
I think it's my duty and my responsibility as the Attorney General of the state of Idaho to ensure that the laws are followed in the state of Idaho, and that's what I'm doing with this lawsuit.
I also asked Mayville what it would cost to implement new systems and equipment for this new way of voting. He says it can be implemented at a low cost. He also says the Idaho Division of Financial Management concluded upgrading the equipment would cost as little as $600,000 for the entire state. Joe, I know that you are going to get into more and tell us more about that as well.
Yes, let's do that right now, Aspen. That's part 1. How about part 2, this potential cost of overhauling Idaho's election? So you heard what Aspen just said, but this is a major topic of conversation because Well, there's a letter that's out there. That's right. Secretary of State Phil McGrain, he wrote to Idaho lawmakers earlier this month about some important considerations and potential implications that the initiative could have on Idaho's budgets and elections. And the timing of the letter, it's not random. It's linked to Idahoans for Open Primaries qualifying for the ballot. Secretary McGrain wanted lawmakers, a crucial part of Idaho's budgeting process, to fully understand the scope of the impacts in case it does pass. And he wants them to know it now rather than way down the line. Lawmakers need to be prepared to roll with the will of the people, and being informed well ahead of the end results, it'll help that whole thing. Again, if it passes. I spoke with Secretary McGrain about the implications involved here, and I want to be very clear. McGrain is not endorsing or opposing the idea. His job is to oversee elections, and the initiative would change almost everything in how he has to do that. He also has a dual role because, as Secretary of State, he oversees the initiative process, a responsibility to protect the people's right to petition. A special letter from Idaho's top election official highlights the impacts of the proposed initiative from Idahoans for Open Primaries.
As the chief election official for the state, I felt it was important to get some of this just basic information out as to what does this mean for the state of Idaho.
Idaho Secretary of State Phil McGrain is the recipient of questions from across the board on this topic.
What does this mean related to elections? And so I was very mindful in writing this letter to just put out as best I can factual information and to make sure that we did our due diligence in researching what does this mean with the election equipment we currently use? What does this mean with our relationship with the counties?
McGrain says the open primary portion of the pitch could save money in the sense that ballots would be more uniform, doing away with ballots for each party. Point 2 of the initiative, instant runoff voting, also known as ranked choice voting, is a different story.
Unfortunately, the current equipment vendors that our state uses aren't built to do a ranked choice voting tabulation. And that's one of the biggest challenges that really comes with that. Between that and then the logistics of coordination between the 44 counties, those are the two things that really stood out to me.
Options exist to make it happen, but there are factors beyond just cost.
That software has not been certified by the U.S. Election Assistance Commission. We've always relied as a state on having that U.S. certification prior to even entertaining any vendor being used in Idaho. Currently, the two vendors we have aren't able to do ranked choice voting, but also aren't pursuing it either.
So what is the estimated cost? Well, it's a tough figure to calculate.
We've estimated that it could cost as much as $25 to $40 million. That is an educated estimate based on what we have spent on election equipment in the past. Without really doing a competitive bid, there's no way to know for sure what this would cost our state. I have talked to other states that have recently replaced their equipment, but again, there's nuances between all the states, and it just doesn't feel like a good comparison, just depending on how other states run their elections versus how we do it here in Idaho.
The price tag debate is also rooted in the fiscal impact statement prepared for the initiative. By Idaho law, there's only a small window for the state of Idaho to get that info prepared before it goes out to the public. And more info has come up since that point.
They were trying to get up to speed, and unfortunately, we weren't able to get some of the information that we have today.
It's a major proposal for Idahoans to think about.
This can be done.
Yes.
But whether you philosophically agree with it or not, it's going to take major steps and major equipment and major just training and everything.
Yeah, and I do think in the initiative, if you look at the what the petitioners provided for their funding statement, they highlight the two things that we also highlighted. It was cost in terms of equipment to be able to do it and voter education. Those are the two biggest areas that we see there could be a cost. Now I think it's a decision for voters on, is this cost worth it? I mean, we spend a lot of money on a lot of different things, and it's a value judgment on, is this change worth whatever it's going to cost to get there?
And there are also practical challenges that the Secretary of State's office pointed out. For example, coordinating results for races that go over county lines. Idaho's pitch is modeled off of Alaska, a place that McGrain has found firsthand runs elections much differently in Idaho. For just one example, the state of Idaho, as you may know, they run elections through the county. Well, Alaska doesn't do that. They actually have 5 state divisions, so it can be very hard to compare Idaho and Alaska. That's the challenge. The proposed initiative is modeled off of Alaska, so we'll keep that in mind. But McGrain also tells me that he has already spoken to lawmakers about creating a mechanism to update a fiscal impact statement on an initiative. And just another fun fact, going back to the lawsuit that Aspen mentioned, Secretary McGrain is technically on both sides of it because he maintains the initiatives, he maintains the elections. He is really in this one, so we will keep you posted.